I'm sorry if I get emotional on this part because, um, as I often say to fellow male survivors, women have been the warriors in this cause, all along. They've been the pioneers, and we follow their footsteps, trying to find our way. My sister did that even as a child. So I'm sorry. Um, I was Yeah, my sister, when I was about 6, she saved my life, literally. When we were out on a camping trip, I fell into a river. My mother was chasing after my body, trying to save me, but it was a lost cause. My sister wouldn't give up. She pulled me out of that river, and gave me CPR and literally breathed life back into my body. So that was our bond. This was my hero. She literally saved my life. And that was true in her character. This brilliant, even as a child, brilliant, talented, brave little girl. She took my hand one day. We were at the church on a Saturday work day when parishioners come together and you kind of work on the property and pull weeds or paint or whatever you can do to help. And my sister realized the pastor was in his office alone. She grabbed my hand, took me to the pastor's office, and she closed the door. I mean, this little girl, like about 11, 12 years old, was taking charge. She closed the door. She told the pastor what was going on. The pastor stopped her and he said, you stop right there. He said, I know your father. He is a man of God. He is one of our best tithe payers. He's a church deacon. He's a board member. And I'm not going to stand here and hear you talk about him like this. And he told us that we were filled with demons, that were so evil that we could even entice a holy man. And then he phoned our father and told him what was going on, what we had said. And you can imagine what happened at home with that. Um, it was about 2 or 3 years later um, that my sister, well, she had told our mother even before that. And our mother stopped us and said, well, I'm sure whatever you did, whatever happened is, but you did something to deserve it. I don't think she grasped what we were saying because all we said was, when you leave us alone with daddy, he hurts us. And that's all it took for her to shut us up. And so we went with it because severe corporal punishment was a big thing in our home. Um, my sister Martha was about 15. I was about 12 years old when I came home from school one day, and there was a woman in our living room. She was from Child Protective Services, and Martha had called them for help. And this woman talked with her mother, and our mother persuaded the woman that, well, sometimes children make up stories when they've been bad and they get punished, and the woman left. And that night, my mom told her father, what had happened. And he beat me pretty hard, but I just can't describe. I cannot describe what he did to that poor girl, and that this poor, wonderful human being who was brilliant and intelligent and had everything going for her. She was an attractive young girl, and that night she changed, and it was so strange that it was as if the rest of her life she was trapped in that 15-year-old adolescent mind. And she was angry and vengeful, and that night she swore she was going to get revenge on her father. She didn't survive the journey. Most people assume that means suicide, but she didn't kill herself literally. She met a very nice young man, oh, very good guy, during her senior year in high school. And within weeks of graduating high school, she married him and moved far away. And he was a good guy. He worked so hard. He was faithful. He worked 14-hour days on the hot ranches of Central California, making a living, and providing for her. It became quickly apparent that she couldn't handle being loved. She just couldn't handle it. So she found a way to destroy that marriage. And she had nowhere to go. She didn't want to return to my parents' home. She had no career, no education. So she lived homeless in a vehicle for 3 years until she was so destitute she had no choice but to move back to my parents' home. My sister lived there for about 20 years or so, and she kept progressively finding company and friends who kind of reinforced our childhood abuse, treated her less than, used her until she found a man who, as legally as I have to say, led her to her grave. And basically, she ended up dead. There was a motive. There was the opportunity. There was a timeline. He had everything going, and he was a master manipulator. And so he sent her to her grave without us even knowing the cause of death. And my father, because he was being threatened of being exposed as a pedophile, he assisted this man and into keeping her story silent. So my sister was sent to her grave, and we have no idea why, what the cause was.
Wow.
That doesn't sound possible in the state of California in this day and age, but it definitely was. It appeared that when there's every indication that the law enforcement agency involved, when they realized their blunder of signing off this death over the phone with no examination, no autopsy, nothing, over a suspicious and unexplained death, that they covered up their blunder by partnering up with this man, defending him, and disparaging the family. And so they simply wrote the reports calling us liars. There's only two descendants in my generation behind me. I'm the youngest of four siblings. My eldest brother is the only one of the four who married and had children. So there's only a niece and nephew. The family had gathered to kind of mourn and try to make sense of this craziness. And when I saw the pain in my niece and nephew's eyes, as we sat together at this table, trying to figure out why in the world their grandfather would disown and sever ties with his only granddaughter and only grandson, that was when I decided I have to. I know this is not going to go well, but I have to reveal to them the story, the backstory of all of this, and why they kept asking, is he being blackmailed? What does that guy have on him? What's going on? And so that's when I revealed to them, I disclosed that, about the abuse. And suddenly I expected to hear things like, you're lying, you're making this up, you dreamed this. But it was the opposite in my situation for most survivors, where everybody who heard of this, the dominoes fell into place. Everything made sense, and the craziness of their lives in this experience. And suddenly, immediate family members, extended family members, former neighbors, the neighborhood children, the Boy Scouts of America, children that grew up with church, the stories began flooding out about my father's serial abuse. It appears that I've never heard another story among any of them about the sadistic part. That seems to have been exclusive to my sister and I, but he sexually abused. Yeah, he headed up the children's music ministry at our church alone. And of course, he was a devout, church deacon, church board member, and the adults, it was a small church, about 80 people. They loved that they could enjoy Sunday morning worship while my father bravely took the children down into a basement Sunday school room and headed up the children's program by himself. And they were just, they thought that was just so noble. And so as children, there's no way you can push back against that. We were a highly respected family in our church and our church community. So secrets were everything. My father, and oddly enough, his best friend who lived next door would our mother would go grocery shopping on Saturday afternoons. And so would the neighbor's wife. So because they were friends. So my mother and the neighbor's wife would go shopping for groceries and leave my sister and I in the care of these two men. My father would grab my sister and I by the wrist and drag us next door to the neighbor's garage. And they would close the garage door, and they had actually built a special silent proof room. As young adults, that's when we each realized I had memorized every moment of the assaults. I mean, every single moment, except for the points where it became so intense that I blacked out. But my sister, she had blocked memories out. She blocked out even entire years of her childhood. And it was when we were sharing that I would ask her, "Do you remember this?" And she would be flooded with memories. Often she would say, I thought that was just a nightmare I had." So we were confirming each other's memories or affirming them.